Haddoken's been here many, many years, was on our board, so sorry we can't hear him. But before we get going too, we're only 2 days away from 9/11, so I think it's appropriate that we have a minute of silence for those people who died in that tragic accident, or it wasn't an accident, it was tragic. Let's just have a moment of silence for them. Okay, thank you very much. Well, we'll get going. Before we start, I'd like to thank some people who have put this together and done. First, I'd like to thank, I'm Rick Knapp, get to be co-president with Randall Thompson this year, of our board of directors, who put in a lot of time throughout the year for nothing in return. In fact, they give so much, just like Cliff and Through Tubing. Let me go through their names. There's so many of them I could do, but I didn't want to leave anybody out. Phil Owens at the back, who took your money with R.L. Hilbin. Gordon Zimmerman back there. Kathy Roark. Jeremiah Smith. We have a new board member, Katie Turner.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. Cliff McCon over there. Aaron Hoke is here. Matt Hill. I've seen Matt. Oh, there he's right in front. I want to thank him too for setting all this up with the PAs and everything, the AV and everything. Bill Boykin, who can't be here today. Randall Thompson, who can't be here today. Sammy Graham, who also is not here today. Sammy's been on the board almost as long as I have, like 4 decades. Alan Fort Miller. Is Alan here today? There, okay, he's back there, yeah. And John Ungerect, who can't be with us, who puts all this together. First, let me thank Cliff McCon and Through Tubing and all the guys cooking. Can we have a hand for these guys? Who also did some of the drinks, along with Gordon Zimmerman, who brought some of the drinks too. So thank you guys. Before I hand it over to Jeremiah, I want you guys, we do have our golf tournament on September 24th, coming up very quick. Would really appreciate your support. All the money that we get goes to scholarships to our members' children, and then we do one each at OU and OSU. So it's what we do. It's our main fundraiser here. So please join our golf tournament if you can. All righty, let me turn it over now to Jeremiah, who will introduce the speakers.
Hey guys. So our first speaker is Joe Berbetti. Great dude, been in Oklahoma kicking butt for us, drilling, and nobody else was the last couple of years. He's a registered professional engineer in the state of Oklahoma, former professor, adjunct in the Petroleum Engineering Department, College of Engineering, University of Oklahoma. He's also got a bachelor's of science in physics. Since 2004, he's been the managing member of Charter Oak Production in Oklahoma City. They're drilling right now, I believe, right, Joe? Yeah. Thank you. Keep it going. Prior to that, from almost the beginning of time, or 1976 through 2004, worked for Schlumberger. Without further ado, come on up, buddy.
Thanks, Jeremiah. Yeah, we're still drilling. 500 feet left to go. If you're going to have a problem on a rig, I learned a long time ago, it's going to be the top drive. So yesterday's story, MWD quits last night. Wow, MWD quits. That doesn't happen, right? And they come out of the hole. There was a piece of the top drive that made all the way down to the MWD crater bed. And so they're going back in the hole. And I really appreciate the chance to be here and all you guys and everything that everyone has done. I mean, I think all of you, if you deal with people from other industries, I've been dealing with some like real estate developers lately or stuff like that. It's so different in the oil patch. I mean, the oil patch, everybody is just like, let's work together. We work on a different time frame. You know, you talk to people in other industries. Yeah, we'll be back to you in 2 weeks. I mean, you know, the oil patch, you mentioned something, and by the time you get back to your office, you already got the info emailed to you. You know, this is so great. So great. Thanks to everybody for a great patch. And sadly, we don't do enough to put our message forth about all the good we've done to society. I mean, people have, you know, heat and air conditioning and efficient transportation. And so I got to tell a quick story. So a friend of mine who lives out in Western Oklahoma is a retired dentist. He's very conservative. He sends me this this link, text link to some other airplane guys. I know them through airplanes, about this article in a somewhat left-leaning magazine, and it's dead serious. His author says we need to give up air conditioning because air conditioning is destroying the planet. And one of our airplane buddies in Texas, who's originally from Oklahoma, from Piedmont, he like immediately comes back. He goes, "This is not going to go over well in Texas or Oklahoma." so again, we just you know, we have an image problem, and hopefully all of us, with all the great things that we do, you know, the fundraisers and so forth, and the charities we work in, hopefully that, and again, just it's fantastic, and thanks to everybody and so forth. So that being said, I promised a couple of people I was going to be brief. You can't do that. But first of all, activity. Everybody asks about activity. We're typical of little guys that, you know, we not public. We're not funded by private equity companies. No offense to the private equity funders. We've talked to them. Some of you guys deal with them. We've talked to them, and frankly, I just didn't want a bunch of guys fresh out of an MBA school trying to tell us how to run our business. So we go out, raise our own money. We do it with, you know, what's now called family offices, old you know, participants. I mean, I say old, they're not old necessarily, but they have been participating in various, you know, businesses for a long time. And it's about the bottom line. You know, if you can make them money, they're going to be there. So last year, tough to make money at the kind of prices we had. And for sure, you know, for sure it's changed, right? In 21, the activity is slow to come back. You know, everybody still is suffered a little bit from last year, but we have come back. We're drilling right now. We're developing, continuing to develop this field up at Perry Lake in northern Oklahoma. It's really more of an engineering play, a very confined porosity bench, and we're running laterals down what is an 8 to 14 foot target of porosity. And we found, fortunately, you get a little higher, a little low, you're going to frack into it. So there's a lot of oil in place because the porosities are, you know, from a low of 14% up to a high of 28%. So, you know, that's, I think, maybe the future. And we've talked about this, I think, before at this and other venues. The future is taking what we learned in the unconventional, you know, whether it was Woodford, you know, Mississippi, Merrimack, et cetera, you know, Wolfcamp, taking the unconventional drilling and completion techniques and going back and applying them to these conventional reservoirs. It's not something that probably would appeal to a big public company because they can't go out and drill 400 wells. You might only drill 4 or 8, but there's a lot of reserves left in the ground. You know, the old saying we've all heard, right? The place to find oil in an oil field. So we're continuing to do that. We've got a project that we had acquired back. We sold some acreage and then later acquired a portion of that back in the scoop, and included 3 DUCs, which we just got the 3rd completed. We got it running on ESP last night. So we have plans to drill probably, besides for the, you know, maybe a couple of wells up at Perry Lake, anywhere from 4 to 8 wells in the scoop play down south. It's Woodford, and we're going to try something new for a little guy. We're going to try drilling a couple of, we just had a meeting this morning. Don't know how it'll go, but we're going to drill a couple of 3-mile laterals. It's shallow TBDs. So our measured depth at the end of the lateral will be maybe 22,000 feet. So it'll take a little bit, but we got a big target. I think with, you know, proper planning, good rigs, and I've been encouraged talking to some people like you know, hearing about things that companies have done in other areas with 3-mile laterals, and you're just starting to see it here in the mid-continent in the last year or two. So the issues there become surface. We've got surface issues with owners, and we're going to end up with surface owners, and end up with rivers and stranded sections. And so we'll see how that goes. And being a small company, and it's just my son and I doing the engineering, we depend upon everybody to do that. Wildcat down in Texas, we shot a 3D last year. It was horribly painful and expensive to get the 3D shot. Again, because of surface development going on, but our plans are to drill one deep vertical pilot hole to the Arbuckle or Ellenberger, and then probably one horizontal. So that'll be for next year also. And then reworks, we kind of, we operate a little over 200 wells. So we always have about 10 or 12 reworks. We got a couple of gas reworks that we put off because gas prices until about, I don't know, a month ago were so horrible. You just couldn't go out and spend even $100,000 on what might make you, 200-300 million gas. There wasn't a return, but gas prices are great. Et cetera, et cetera. Call over there, Melanie Boyce down there, but I'll get you in touch with anybody if you need to. We do have some boot space left, and then of course on the 14th, I think if you register in advance, and those emails will be coming out in the next week or so, it's free if you register in advance, and you get a Head Country barbecue lunch. I know Matt said he's going to be there taking video, so you might be on live international TV. Second shameless plug, Petroleum Alliance. Also on the board of the Petroleum Alliance, chair of the regulatory committee, which I got that by default when the guy who was chair got retired from a public company. And I know nothing about regulatory except, man, there's all kinds of regulations that come down the pike, and none of them are to help us. Okay, that's the first thing. None of them help us. They're all trying to limit what we can do, but it's groups like that. The Petroleum Alliance has so many different subcommittees that work to the benefit of the industry, particularly the Oklahoma industry. So I'd encourage you, if you are not a member, to be a member, and if you are a member, to support the fall meeting. It's going to be in November. It's going to be in Oklahoma City this year. I believe it's the new convention center. As opposed to typically we've gone up to Big Cedar Lodge for the fall meeting, and that's kind of a distance and expense. But there's going to be an industry auction, so you may have been hit up to donate something to that industry auction. Please help if you can. Attend the fall conference, and again, if you're not a member, join. That's the shameless plugs. Open it up to questions, heckling, whatever. Oh, come on. Somebody has it. Jeremiah, you always have a question.
I know.
Oh, I have a question.
There it is.
Where in Texas are your
Grayson County is really part of the Ogden Marietta Basin that's come down across the river. Yeah. It's essentially the same rocks. With aerial war drone, we shot this 3D. There has not been a lot of activity, partly because of the development of the town of Sherman, Denison. I mean, we had to have police escorts. Police escorts slow things down. The funny story is, I have to tell you, we didn't vibe anybody. We use vibes, no dynamite. Anybody who had less than 10 acres, and we used all. Dawson did the shoot, and all these wireless boxes. They record wireless. With memory. And we would pay $10 an acre, which is high by Oklahoma standards, where you pay $7.50 an acre just to put your receivers out. So the runaway guy, they're trying to get a hold of this one person. There are a bunch of these people. They're never home. I mean, they work in Dallas. They come in late at night. The weekends they're off doing soccer tournaments, whatever. with their kids. But they've only got one guy. He's got a multi-million-dollar house on 10 acres. And he goes to the other guy, so how much money are you paying me to put them little things out there? And he goes, you're going to get $100, $10 an acre. He goes, I pay my lawn guys like way more than that every week just to mow this place up. So in perspective, we weren't moving the needle, but there's an area down there where the thrust comes over, and but we think all those Ardmore Basin, Marietta Basin rocks are coming down underneath. So we're excited about it, and we've worked on this for a while, and like to hope to get that done next year. So.
Joe, what do you think your technological difficulties are going to be with the 3 mile lateral? Have there been very many drilled in Oklahoma to date?
Yeah, I think Continental's done some. We talked about that, right? At that meeting with the reception for Governor Stitt. There's been a lot done in other areas, Bakken, Permian. A lot of it's been done where there's been obstructions, reservoirs and things like that. So obviously, getting the drill string out can be an issue, but we've proven you can go down 15,000 feet and out 10. So I would like to think you could go down 7,000 and out 15. So you got to probably use weighted drill pipe. I mean, I hate drilling because if something's going to go wrong, like we said, it's going to be when you're drilling, not generally not when you're completing. So you probably have to use weighted drill pipe agitators. You really need to use rotary steerables. On the completion side, our thought is that, I mean, you can do a coil clean out. That's not a big deal, 22,000 feet, but we'll probably run some of these. Our temperatures are low, 125 to 140 degrees, depending on where we're at. So we'll probably use some of these magnesium dissolvable plugs, not the thermoplastic ones. They don't like to dissolve at those temperatures, but we could, at least in the toe areas, use some of those. So if you can't get your coil cleanup done, you like to think that dissolve out. I don't know, maybe you guys got some ideas of what other difficulties we would encounter, but that's right now what we're thinking is the issues in that lab. It's that all in that last probably 2,000-3,000 feet of lateral.
Pretty fractured up down there too, isn't it?
There are natural fractures. There's some faulting. We shot a 3D down there back 14, 15. And it's good quality, because the dips are shallow, your velocities are known, is what the geophysicists tell me. So we think we can see all of the faults, the big faults that we need to avoid. They generally run north-south, which is good, because your laterals are running north-south, so you can just try to stay offsetting them. And when you're in 100 plus foot target, if you cross a 20-foot fault, it's not a big deal. When you're in a 10-foot target and you cross a 10-foot fault, that's a big deal, like up north. So. Question.
Yeah, does Charter Oak do any hedging? I mean, it's kind of nice to walk into $4 gas prices right now.
That is a very appropriate question, because this morning I had a meeting with a banker, of course, who'd love to get our business, and of course, obviously they're big in pushing hedges. And no, and my answer to him was, I barely know enough about finding and drilling and completing and producing the oil and gas, let alone on the hedging. And here's the takeaway from this. For this year, and he didn't disagree with these numbers. I had read or heard in a podcast somewhere, maybe one that about 50% of the oil production in the U.S. was hedged at $45 and lower. So all those guys that did that, and they were probably forced by their lenders or their funders, if they were PE funded, etc. All those guys essentially, and they're two separate transactions, but all those guys they were stuck with a cash flow off of $45 oil, where the independents like us who did not hedge, we got a benefit of the $60, $70 oil. And because it's difficult for small guys to hedge, what we did last year, and I don't know if this was the time, we didn't know if it was going to be good or bad, but the bulk of our participants said, you do what you have to do. When oil started dropping and we saw the signs of all these shutdowns having potential effects on the oil demand, I got with our field guys. We have a water disposal company, by the way, if you're down in the Scoop, Blue Water Solutions, and we had to buy a trucking company. We own part of a roustabout company. I hate that. One of our field guys runs it, C&M Roustabout, C&M Transport. So we started looking for frac tanks. our way of hedging was to get frac tanks. And believe it or not, early on, we would talk to companies with frac tanks, and they're like, hey, if you will let us truck the frac tank to your location and truck it back and clean it out, we'll give it to you for free, because they were getting all these frac tanks turned in when all the rigs and the completion crews were shutting down. So it's like, well, this is a good deal. And then, of course, the prices then started going up. People started charging us, $3 a day, $4 a day, $5 a day as frac tanks got into demand. And then, of course, on that point, once we got into the trucking those ourselves. So the bottom line was we stockpiled last year about 60,000 barrels of oil, and we sold very little. I mean, there's some wells we just had to keep producing, but we sold very little at the $12 and $18 and $24 prices we got. Most of the oil we sold at $45. And I think our average cost on the rentals, the trucking, the clean out of those frac tanks for about 120 days was about $4.50 a barrel. So, that was our form of hedging. Long answer to a short question, but natural gas, I mean, that's what everybody's excited about right now. Myself, I think right now, it's good to go do some gas deals. And maybe in the longer term, 5-10 years, I think we're going to see continued gas prices, because it will be recognized as a way to generate power. You can't shut down as many nuclear and coal plants and try to replace them with renewables if you don't have a way to do peak power. And the only effective way right now that I know of peak power is with these natural gas turbines. So I think there will be a market for natural gas. Till it got up to $4, it's tough to go drill a $6, $8, $10, $12 million well and think you're going to sell enough gas. Around here. Now you go up to Utica and stories I hear of the Haynesville and some of these wells, Eagle Ford Gas Window, Marcellus. Some of these wells are probably some of you guys are drilling them. I think of 20 to 40 BCF wells. So gas gets high enough, those rigs will crank up there. Well, great. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, once again, Joe is very active in the Oklahoma Oil. Do join SOAR. They have great classes. You can follow their mailers, their emails and whatnot. It's really great what they do. Next, we got Chad Duff. Here he is. He's a Southern Region Completions Manager. I know you guys probably all know Continental switching and halfback, and go into detail about that. He joined Continental in May of 2011 as a completions foreman and made his way up to now the completions manager. Prior to that, he worked for Weatherford, and he attended OSU. Got a technical degree in Southwest OSU.
There you go.
Yeah, there he is, guys. Jack, you need it?
I don't need it. No, thanks for the new microphone, but I'm not going to use that. Thank y'all for taking the time today. I'm actually kind of shocked. I was invited to come back and do this again. But I do appreciate it. I'm grossly underqualified whenever I follow up Joe and some guys like that. Grossly underqualified to be one of the people standing up here. So thanks for bearing with me. I know the plan here is, or what the ask was to talk about activity, what we see in the future coming up. But I thought maybe we talk about the Biden administration and the retreat from Afghanistan, abortion, gun control, vaccines.
Don't forget inflation.
Inflation, that seems a little spicier. Just been talking about technology and our future forecasts, but I'm kidding. I'm not going to talk about that, especially as a Continental representative. I like what happens every other Friday. So I'm not.
You can edit that out, right?
Yeah, it's just like to tell the story of Continental would probably be a great place to start. We've been around for about 54 years. Everybody knows Harold Hamm under this pavilion. If you don't, I'm shocked. But he founded the company 54 years ago. Currently, we have about 1,200 employees. We operate a little over 4,000 wells right now. Just under 3,000 in the Bakken, about 1,000 here. And then recently the addition of some Powder River assets from Samson. I think that was last year that occurred. We produced, I think this year we should average 330, 340 MBOE a day net. So when you look around the industry, look around the state, and look at our head count versus well count or production, there's a drastic difference between Continental and a lot of other operators. We're proud of that. I like telling that story. I like bragging on the people that make it happen. I like being a very, very small part of it, but getting to have that effect is pretty awesome. Or being part of something much, much bigger than myself. I'll get into some more of that a little bit later. To speak to our activity levels this year and kind of a little bit of foresight into next year. Our CapEx budget this year, I think we're like right at $1.4 billion right now, or at least on the latest earnings release. We look to throw off about $3.8 billion of operating cash flow. So $2.4 billion of free cash flow. If you roll back to a year ago, or what happened last year, we were lucky and we're very, very fortunate to have made it out of the year with, I think, $275 million of free cash flow. So everybody knows this. It's a heck of a lot easier to breathe right now than it was a year ago. Another thing I kind of got a kick out of, or I was glad we made it through it, our market cap this time last year was $5.5 billion versus $14 billion today, and everybody's in the same shape. That's awesome. We're happy for it. We're blessed to be where we are today. That was an interesting one to look at for me. Spoke at this last year. The environment was much different. There weren't nearly as many smiles around, including myself. So how do we do that? And this is, I kind of spoke to a similar thing last year, but have better example this year, I think. Our 5 core values is what center everything that we've had success with and our sustainability today. That's where it comes from, those 5 core values. The first one being safety. Every one of us in the room, that will be your first core value, or else, I'm sure. We are absolutely adamant about being stewards to the environment and we're sending everybody home in the same shape or better than they showed up. Our commitment to that, if you don't know about the Onshore Safety Alliance, back to the shameless plugs, as Joe dropped a few of, I've got plenty myself. The Onshore Safety Alliance, it's free to join. It's for operators and service companies alike. It's not huge yet, but what we were doing pre-pandemic and what we've tried to carry on or carry forward are what we call safety summits. I think there's a Devon guy or two floating around here. It was us, Devon, Marathon, Ovenov, a lot of the larger players around the Mid-Con, and obviously everybody has operations in other places, but we'd get together with the pertinent leadership from each of those companies, looking for the companies with the highest level of operations, with the most exposure, and we talk about incidents, and we would make every lawyer in every company cringe because we would be very transparent with each other about what happened. But what came from those meetings and those safety summits was that it was collaborative. We were taking from the experiences of other companies and preventing fatalities in some cases in our operations. So I guess that all goes to say you're not necessarily alone in that battle, in that fight to make your operations as safe as possible. So My shameless plug for the Onshore Safety Alliance is that I think that's even the name of the website, so it's easy to find. It's free to join, and you'll have access to a ton of training materials, and of course there'll be meetings and all that fun stuff. The second core value, honesty, which we exude as well. Joe mentioned being an ambassador to the industry. But another thing the Continental's done, I think in the last year, it might be in the last year and a half, was create a partnership with the OERB to create the Oil and Gas Ambassador Program. To date, that's just been Continental employees that have entered this program. Yeah, I think it's a month or two from being rolled out to the public. But what that does, and what Joe mentioned this, if you don't have fact-based knowledge to share with people in the public space or people that are on the other side of a partisan view, like you're just arguing for nothing. That nobody cares about one person's opinion. It has to be fact-based. It has to be vetted. And what the Oil and Gas Ambassador Program does is arms every one of us, every one of your employees, every one of your family members with fact-based knowledge that you can talk about intelligently or semi-intelligently, in my case. So look for that to come out. Integrity is our third core value. I think the best example of integrity came during the polar vortex that we all lived through in February. So we all know what happened to electricity, or to our grid. It was absolutely strained. I think we all probably around here are well aware of the fact that renewables proved unreliable. Wind or electricity production from wind dropped like 95%, I think was the number. Solar electricity production is negligible in my opinion. I love picking on them. But it is a piece of the space. But what Continental did as a show of integrity, and there's a couple more core values that get into it. Whenever Oklahoma's natural gas production started falling, as everybody knows what happened, everything was frozen up. You name it, it was frozen. As that was falling, we were out 24/7 trying to keep our wells on. In the end, what ended up taking place as other operators were nearly just sheltering in place at the house and leaving wells shut in, we weren't. All hands were on deck. We were all out 24/7, myself included. We had equipment from all kinds of different states here keeping stuff thawed out. What transpired after that, we're fighting line pressure, keep the gas moving, with the intention of keeping gas going to power generation plants to keep all of our family lights on. We ended up helping the midstream companies too. I didn't know this before, but you're standing in the middle of a compressor station and everything goes down and we don't know why. It's because they lost electricity. So there's this do loop of it's a complication after complication that we couldn't feed them gas to make electricity, so they cut the electricity through a rolling blackout, and then we lose more gas. The downhill spiral effect was crazy. Again, I'm trying to get to the point here, but as a show of integrity and holding to one of our primary core values, we made it known, and the Petroleum Alliance was heavily involved in this, to our local administration, STID, and he stepped in and he got Southwest Power Pool to ensure that the midstream infrastructure that's absolutely critical to us kept electricity, so we can keep moving gas, so we can keep everybody's lights on, and keep everybody warm. That's the most absolute show of integrity that I can think of in recent times. I mean, that we haven't. I don't think Oklahoma's faced a storm that bad or an adverse environment that bad in decades. I'm not sure what the actual number is, but I don't know if anybody here would remember a colder time. Before I keep going, renewables, wind, solar, geothermal, you name it. Probably the name's not exactly accurate because if you look the definition up, it says something about constant regeneration. There's nothing constant about wind energy or solar. So I have a hard time with the name. What the name kind of tells me is that it's renewing our focus that fossil fuels are very, very critical to our energy infrastructure and our energy security. So remember that. While the administration that is in place today that I mentioned earlier that I said we weren't going to talk about, they're absolutely defunding us as much as they possibly can. And they're trying to decarbonize, and all they're really doing is weakening the infrastructure, the energy security of the United States. We can't forget about that. A fun fact, because I like fun facts, solar power. If we were to power the entire world with solar power, which only generates power, peak power, about 10 hours a day, you can get at peak, I think 1 megawatt per 5 acres. So, but you can only do it for 10 hours a day. So you have to multiply that by 2.4 to get to, and then have batteries to store during the day and create excess energy during the day. And then you use that battery power at night. If you want to get super technical, you don't use as much power at night, but we're using hydrogen here, so it's flat. So you're talking about 12 acres per megawatt. The world consumes 78 terawatts. So if you do the math, you need 600,000 square miles of solar farm. That's Alaska. That's 3 Texans. Like that. And so whenever we start talking about green energy and stuff, who wants to wipe out that big of a swath of land? Why is this not being talked about? So taking a stance against renewables is not why I'm standing up here, but I think those are facts that people need to understand. Fierce competition is number 4 as far as core values go for us. You could probably go right back to that polar vortex and what we did during that to keep our gas flowing. I think we ended up with about 50% of our gas being, or our well, not our gas, but our gas volume being lost during that time. Whereas our peers averaged around 80%, some of them as high as 95, 96, 99%. You want to talk about fierce team or fierce competition? That's it. We were absolutely adamant that we are the largest gas producer in Oklahoma, produce about a BCF a day. There's a reason for that. There's a reason that we plan for it to stay that way. And that experience and going through that and fighting to keep wells on, that's a pretty darn good example of that. Teamwork, that's another example. I mean, you name it. You had all of us out 24/7, trying to keep things going. You had every service company jumping on board that possibly could, equipment coming from everywhere. And half these people didn't charge us. It wasn't about keeping Continental's gas moving or selling Continental's gas. It was about being a brother keeper. And in this scenario, we were Oklahoma's keeper. And we're very, very proud of that. I think the last core value which is not official, but I made it up. But I think it should be there. It's probably frugality. You can more eloquently state that as low-cost leadership. That's another space that we're absolutely adamant that we will be the low-cost leader in the areas we operate. There's plenty of people around the tables here that we do business with, and you understand probably better than the rest how we do that. We do it through utilizing the right technologies at the right times, in the right wells, with the right people, at the right price. So that's probably should be up the list a few notches instead of at the last, the number 6 core value. But that's unofficial, and now it's on record because he's recording this. But either way, I'll wrap it up. The quick activity blurb, because that's what I was supposed to get up here and talk about, and all the rest of this. I think we look to complete 67 gross wells here in Oklahoma, 143 in North Dakota this year. Rig counts here, we're looking at 6 to 7. I believe there's 6 in the air right now, with the 7th one popping up really shortly. A third of our capital is deployed here, roughly 2/3 in North Dakota. Looking at the STEM market, because that's what I do a lot in my role, obviously. Historically, it's kind of a couple of interesting stats there. 2017 through 2019, if you look at Oklahoma as a whole, that we average 46,000 hydraulic fracture stages a year. 46,000 of them over 1,500 wells. We all know what happened in 2020. We all know what happened to activity. We rung the year in with 12,500 stages completed all year, with the vast majority of those happening in the first quarter before the pandemic. Wiped everything out, including activity and profits and all that fun stuff. This year, I think the count right now is right at 14,000, so we've already surpassed what the number of stages that got put in the ground. Last year as a whole, look, if you project that through year end, you're talking about 19,000 stages. It's roughly 500 wells, if I remember right. There's notes in my pocket, but I printed them at the last second and they're too small to read, so it's just all off memory. So don't quote me on any of this. Play it back. But that's about it for me. Any questions?
Expect your CapEx to go up a certain percent next year? What's it looking like?
Not a bunch. Everybody here knows the drill for publicly traded companies. We're prioritizing cash flow and returning value to shareholders. So I don't foresee much of an increase. We're looking at a flat to very slight increase in production.
Did you learn anything about insulating them wellheads so we don't have problems getting this through?
A lot. Yeah. And to be honest, the wellheads aren't so much a problem for us, it's the facility. So, well, if you leave one shut in for very long, you're chasing it all the way back. But, yeah, there were a lot of flameless heaters, and I don't know how many home improvement stores we bought out of tarps during that time.
Wow.
We were making makeshift heat tents and whatnot. So a lot of hard work there. I cannot say enough how proud we are of the people that actually make this happen. It's not the people like me that wear wingtips and slacks that matter. It's the operators, the guys on the ground. So hug those guys whenever you see them. They deserve it.
And, Harold was, I think, instrumental in starting this Gulf Coast Select training metric, because, WTI, et cetera, and then make a lot of sense. What's happened, I heard it got put on the training tour, but then I haven't heard anything about that. So I've seen it in the last couple of 3 months, and is that going to be, you guys self-build?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I spoke to our VP of oil marketing right before I came here and didn't even think to ask about that. To be honest, it's very much outside of my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I understand the fundamentals. I understand our bullish view on oil, our bullish view on gas. I think everybody here is kind of in the same spot, but that Gulf Coast Select specifically, I don't know.
Nothing else?
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Chad. Our final speaker, unfortunately, as Rick brought up earlier, Tim Haddigan couldn't make it. He got canceled last minute. So, in his stead as the final speaker, we have Rich Downey. He's a VP over at Devon, drilling and completions. He attended West Virginia and received a bachelor's in petroleum engineering. He worked at Schlumberger from '86 to 2008, and then swapped over to the operator side, working for EOG as a completion engineer. And he moved up through the ranks and left as a division ops manager in 2017 to join Devon in Tulsa. So, yeah, that's where he's at now. So, there you go.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Hey, first of all, I'd just like to thank you guys for being here and thanks for the invitation. Recently saw Randall at the SP Mardi Gras and we had met and he asked me if I'd be willing to say a few words and I was like, hey, I'm the new guy at Oklahoma City. But his point was a lot has changed for WPX and Devon. We've gone through a lot here in the last year, and I just kind of wanted to run through some of that. But, it was one of those Randall asked me to present, and I was like, okay, what's the topics? Where do you want to go with it? He said, just get up and talk about what's going on. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm an engineer. I'm used to having slides. So, bear with me here. But, as we said, I graduated from West Virginia University, and we've seen so many cycles in this industry. And I mean, talk about the biggest cycle that I saw is I started in petroleum engineering in 1981. And I knew I wanted to go into engineering. I came from a family that was not in the oil and gas industry. But when I looked at the oil and gas industry, everybody I knew was getting 10, 12 job offers. Some 14 job offers. I graduated in 1985, and 10% of my class got a job. I was fortunate enough to go with Dowell at the time. Which was a great opportunity. It got me into the service side of the training and sticking with Schlumberger. And what I got with Schlumberger, I moved around quite a bit. Kind of hate to say it, but this is the 4th time I've moved to Oklahoma City. This is actually my 20th move. I wouldn't trade for anything because of the training that I've got from it and everything that's gone with it. It's been phenomenal. But I really wanted to get up here today and just kind of talk a little bit about, the WPX Devon, what we've gone through, some challenges. I was glad you got into the values because I wanted to touch on our values as well. And I'm not going to kill the same values because we only got one that overlap, integrity. And when we look at integrity, I've worked in a lot of different places and I've worked in a lot of different areas. And I remember being in Indonesia, sitting with a drilling manager one time, and he was not looking at doing things because they're the right thing to do. It was like, oh, the regulatory makes us do this, makes us do that. When you can get away with it, then get away with it. That's what integrity is doing things when it is the right thing to do. And that's our focus when we get into the ESG side and what we're doing there. I mean, it's not just keeping up, it's doing what's right. But to talk about the merger a little bit, I was here, came up to Oklahoma City in 2014 with EOG. EOG was a little bit late to the scoop stack. And we really felt that it was going to be the next play for EOG. It was the 7th division. We really expected a lot of growth. We all know what commodity prices did in 2014, and it just didn't take off as quick as we had hoped. In 2017, the opportunity came up with WPX, and I moved up to Tulsa. And, you know, just like you talked about Continental and working for a company that you respect, Rick Moncrief, a lot of you guys probably know, running WPX, that's what integrity is about. And working for a person like that, and thank God he's down here as the CEO of the New Devon organization. And Clay is the COO, which I work directly for. It means something when you have the pride in the company you work for and the pride of where the company's at and the people you work for. So it goes a long way. So if you take a look at the organization, we're about 6-7 months into it. Believe me, we've had our challenges. Right as COVID hit last year, WPX had bought Felix out in Delaware. We bought 45,000 acres. We bought Monument Draw from Felix. We thought we had challenges, but it was an acquisition. And an acquisition is so much easier because it's coming into our systems. It's coming into the way we do things. This deal with WPX and Devon was very much a merger, and it was meant to be a merger. It was all a stock deal. The reason for that is both companies were doing very well. And so how do you pull in the best practices of both companies? How do you keep that running? You know, the question came up on hedging. As WPX being a smaller company, we were highly hedged. Last year when COVID hit, we were 100% hedged at 57. It was a grand slam. The year before that, we were hedged at a lower rate. We were able to tell the banks to know exactly what our cash flow was going to be. What we've been able to do, you guys may be watching a little bit, is Devon offers a variable dividend right now. And the question is what the heck is variable dividend? Well, we always gave a 15-cent dividend, but that wasn't enough to make a difference. And so we created the variable dividend for 2 reasons: to give back and also to make a commitment. Because right now, the industry is not looking for growth through the drill bit. It's looking for solid cash flow. And so what our plan is with our variable dividend, is we get 15%, 15 cents based on our actual dividend that won't change. The variable dividend is all on top of that. And what that allows us to do is we take 50% of our free cash flow from that quarter and we give it back as a dividend. So our dividend, 3 quarters in a row, we actually did give a dividend first quarter this year, even though we merged during the first quarter. But we've increased it all 3 quarters, and that's really our goal, is to prove to the street that it's for real. It's not just something that came out of the merger. It's really something for real. So last quarter, we increased our dividend by 44%, up to 49 cents. It's the biggest dividend we've ever done. So that is really showing the health of the company, and you're going to continue to see that. And that's one reason, you know, if you take a look at the merger, one thing that was very positive of the merger is we had $2 billion worth of cash after we were finished with the merger. And we're sitting on $2 billion. But trying to be very smart about any acquisitions. And plus, we also don't want the street to think that we went and made an acquisition just to cover up anything that's happening with the dividend, anything that's happening with the activity. We want to prove that the strength of the company is extremely strong right now, and we're in good shape. So just kind of talk about activity, where we're at, what we're doing. Biggest plays in Delaware. The nice thing about it is it fit very well together, bringing WPX and Devon together. Positive thing is if you take a look at everything WPX had was basically south of the state line. The majority of Devon was north of the state line. There's some overlap, and we've actually done that in divisions now. We pulled those overlaps into one. But 400,000 acres sitting in Delaware right now, it's premium acreage. So our goal is very much to keep our activity very consistent. So let's start with the Delaware. Today we have 5 rigs running in the south of the state line. We are in what we call the state line area, which is the checkerboard, and then over in Monument Draw that we had purchased off Felix. And if you go north of the state line, which is a lot of federal land, we've got 8 rigs running there right now, and 9th rig coming in January. Take it out of there, you go up to the Powder. We got 1 rig running in the Powder. Powder's still an area that we're working on, trying to understand it, really trying to get it right. We're not the only player up there that's trying to work on it as well. You guys figured it out? We're all keep that conversation going. But it is. It's been a challenge. So we got 1 rig running up in the Powder right now. Just finished up frac fleet on Apartment Well. Things are looking good up there right now. Another area that we have is Williston. Williston has been unbelievable for us. It's been a fantastic area. One of the challenges that we have that you guys have got more running room than we do. We got about 85 additional wells to drill up in that area. We're going to move a rig back up there next year. The challenge with that is both Powder and Williston is, it's 3 to 5 rigs to keep the frac fleet busy. And, we like to keep, and I'll get into that when we start talking about values, but one of our values is very much partnership. We want to partner. Part of partnerships is partnering with our service companies and keeping them consistent. We've already talked about it. I worked for a service company for almost 23 years. And we all know that we can be busy all year, and as soon as that operator walks in and says, hey, I'm out of money, I'm going to drop this fleet for November, December, guess what? We just lost our profitability for the year. So we understand that. We really want to focus on working with our service companies there. We're also in the Anadarko Basin, and I think you guys are aware that we got 2 rigs running in the Anadarko Basin right now. We got a 3rd coming. That is a joint venture that we have with Dow Chemical. It's a great deal for us because Dow Chemical is looking for the product. So they're really helping us fund the project, and it's keeping that activity alive and keeping it going. It's a great opportunity for us. And then we go down to the Eagle Ford, and we have a 50-50 joint venture with BP down in the Eagle Ford. And it is kind of an interesting one for me because coming from drilling and completions, they do all the operations. So they do all the drilling and completions, and they basically handed us over producing wells, and we run them from the producing side. We do have a rig that we're getting ready to move into the Eagle Ford as Devon. It's a DOE project where it's a science project where we're going to go down there and really do some science with some other, not only DOE money, but the industry as well. And that kind of leads into the innovation and the technology. I learned very early in my career, probably 1987, 88, Exxon was drilling a deep RO well. I was based in Elk City, and I was working with them on the acid treatment for that job. And this one stuck with me. As you can tell, it's quite a few years ago. But I was down in Houston in Exxon's office, and the engineer that was working the project, what was the one thing that we were struggling on deep water? Some kind of diversion. What are we going to use for diversion? So we're sitting down there, and Manny was like, okay, you don't have any ball sealers or anything that'll work at that kind of temperature, right? This is what you call innovation. While we're sitting in the office, he picks up the phone, calls NASA, and he says, what's the epoxy that you guys use on the space shuttles for the heat panels? I'll tell you what that epoxy is. That product right there. But it took the innovation, the technology, the thought of, how do I get out of the box? What do I do different? And these were the ball sealers that we pumped on that NASA job. And we did see diversion, so they made it down to the perks. So it really drove, and I use that example with a lot of our engineers as well. It's just, how do we get out of the box? How do we get better at what we're doing? So I think I hit all the areas. So we got the Delaware, we got Williston, we got the Powder, we got Anadarko, we got Eagle Ford. The nice thing about that is we got the diversity. If you take a look at what we got running in the Delaware today, we've got 5 rigs running in the south. We got 8 rigs running in the north with the 9th coming. We got 2 frac fleets running in the north, 2 frac fleets running in the south. That's consistent activity that we keep going. We got 2 rigs running in Anadarko with a third coming. We got 1 running in Powder. We got 1 coming in Williston in January. So we're seeing a little bit of activity increase, but really our focus is if we make 286,000 barrels today, our goal is 286,000 barrels. And as we all know, in unconventional plays, if we can kind of just to keep that 286,000, I just went through the amount of activity that we're going to have to continue doing. So we're spending somewhere between 1.8 and 1.9 billion dollars this year. Next year we'll be under 2 billion. We haven't totally set our budget yet. We got a little bit of activity increase, but not much. And some of it's working in the powder, trying to figure out the powder, as well as some of the commitments we have in different areas. It's a big deal for us. I mean, and that's really our goal, is just really stay disciplined, stay at it, get better. Value. You talked about cost, well cost. It's the value that we're getting out of that well cost. What's the right technology? I'll talk a little bit about the organization, what we did. This was a merger. So it wasn't turned around that we're just going to, turn everything over to one company or the other. Rick, CEO, Clay being the COO, came from the WPX side. This will probably hopefully be the last time I kind of say us and them side, because that's not my goal. But then we decided to base it in Oklahoma City and keep the Devon name. It's a very industry recognized name. If you take a look at it, we were about 585 people up in Tulsa for WPX, about 1,600 people here in the Devon Tower, not just Devon Tower, but in the Devon organization. We're about 1,500 people right now. We brought quite a few from Tulsa. And I'll talk about the D&C side. If you take a look at the D&C side, we about 70% of the drilling and completions team is came from the Devon organization, and just over 30% came from WPX. We moved quite a few people in. And our objective was, when we looked at the organization, is both companies were doing some great things, but we're still not doing it the same. So what's right, what's wrong, without just throwing it out the window because I came from WPX, we're going to do it my way. So we tried to get pretty innovative on the organization. We have 2 drilling managers, and as I already told you, Delaware North was the Devon side, Delaware South was the WPX side. We took the drilling manager from Delaware South and put him over to Delaware North, and vice versa. We didn't switch up the supervisors to keep the consistency, and then we switched up the engineers. And we did that through the entire organization. And what we tried to do is we had 2 drilling managers, and then the South drilling manager also has the stack in the Eagle Ford, which is Jason Hildebrand, which you guys know, worked for Continental for a while. And then Jonathan Fisher's now taking over the North, and he also has Williston, and he also has Powder. And then same way with completions, is we got 2 completion managers, but we did a little bit differently because we got 4 frac fleets running in Delaware. We wanted to keep all that under one group. Ryan Knopf's our completion manager on the Delaware side. Terry Gilbert is the completion manager on everything outside of Delaware. And then there again, we just tried to mix up the engineers as much as we possibly could to hang on to those best practices. And I think it's working. Now, has it been painful? Yeah. We've had to work at it because there's 2 different cultures. I mean, it was interesting because we had McKinsey come in as we were going through the merger and do a culture study of both companies. And if you take a look at their ranking, both companies were in the top 5% of all companies that they've ever done this ranking for. Both being in the top 5% does not mean that we both have the same culture. And it's something we've had to work through. One thing that I will say that we're extremely proud of is I spent the last 2 days interviewing for new drilling engineers. So it's something that we haven't done in a while. I mean, at WPX, we were bringing in new engineers. We were younger than what Devon was, but there hasn't been a lot of hiring here. You know, we're in the process of hiring a new completion engineer, new drilling engineer here now. So it shows that we're on this direction rather than a cutting direction. We feel very healthy about that. So it's feeling good. Just wanted to touch on the values, and I kind of listened really close because I was hoping you didn't have all the same ones. But it's nice to hear that values just aren't coming across as cliches anymore. Because I mean, I've heard there's been years where you go ask somebody in the company, what are your values? And it's like, I don't know, let me go check. But the values that there's been a meaning put to them, right? And I'll start with number one, integrity. And I've already talked about that. Integrity is working together and doing things because of the right thing to do. We talk about courage and what we're willing to do from courage standpoint. You know, if you take a look at it and you take a look at acquisitions, there's a courage that goes along with that. Giving 50% of your free cash flow back to the street, there's some courage there. You're giving a lot of money away, but it's making the company much healthier. So, and we work with that with our engineers as well. Not everything we apply. I think with one thing that's happened in engineering today is our industry's become such a cost cutting that a lot of engineers feel that's their job, is just cut costs. And what the goal is change that back to value. Sometimes we spend a little bit more money to save money in the long run. And that is very much driving that message of culture. We look at results, and I don't need to explain to anybody what results are about. I mean, that it's always a focus that we've got to know, we've got to set our objectives and really show results. And that's very much a driver. And then I kind of want to finish up on partnerships and what partnerships really do mean to us. Because we've gone through this merger and the synergy of the two companies, it's been extremely important to get people working together. Quit looking at self and look at, you know, what's the objective of the company. If the company's winning, we're all winning. But it's not just that. It's partnerships. That's what I appreciate about venues like this. This is partnerships. Because if we don't know each other and we're not working together, we're not seeing what technology's out there. What are other people doing? You know, I mean, let's get rid of the pride. And I've used this analogy quite a bit. You've got pride and you got ego. And I think when we started, we were like right here someplace. It was like, we're doing it right. And our drive has been, let's take pride in what we do, but get rid of the ego. And so internally, it's been very much of getting that teamwork right. But on the exterior side, it's working with other operators. I'm glad you brought up the safety side because, I mean, that's been so important. I mean, we don't say it wrong, but I mean, safety is not one of our core values because it's owned by everybody in the company. But partnerships like that where we sit down and we have candid discussions. And you're right, the lawyers hate it because we're putting it all on the table. But if putting it all on the table allows one more person to go home safe, the same way they left home, it's worth it. And I think we're seeing a huge value from it. I mean, one of the things that Devin had that we didn't do at WPX, we did a lot of reviews, we did a lot of look backs on incidents, but they do what they call a SIF, which is a serious injury or fatality. So what it is, it could be the smallest near miss. It can be some near miss and a guy out in the rig said, hey, I saw something. But you take a look at it and you say, could it have the potential of being a serious injury or a fatality to somebody? And we'll do a full review on it. And then we'll share it with the safety council. So everybody's seeing what we're trying to do to get above that. And then also just from the relationship side, as you guys can tell, relationship is probably the one that I more passionate about than anything. But it's also working with the industry, working with our service companies. You know, we have a supply chain that's working with our service companies all the time to try to get the best pricing that we can get. but it's also to work with the service companies, so they're staying busy, and we're working with the best service companies that we can. And to build that partnership, so when technology is coming out, or we're working on technology, it comes to us and it says, hey, let's take a look at it. And I've been extremely pleased in the last 6-7 months of the number of companies that are coming to Devon that want to be working for us. And the reason being is, number one, we stay consistent. Hopefully, they see that we're doing what we say we're going to do. It's kind of a big deal. So, with that, I'll just kind of leave it. I will finish with, we were talking about it back here. It's nice to see things getting back. COVID's been a challenge, guys. I mean, it's more of a challenge today than it's been in a long time. I mean, probably every other day we're having cases on frac fleet, on a rig. All I can say is, let's be smart about it. There's a lot we can do. We're back in the office. We're working in the office. But as we're working with crews, let's be smart with what we're doing. We talked about 9/11 and took the time for 9/11, but it's also, here in the last couple of months, I know about 5 people that have passed away from COVID. And it's very real. It's something we need to be very cognizant of. And there again, it's the safety side, and the number of people that we bring to a rig, or the number of people we bring to a frac fleet, come from all over the country. And we just need to make sure that we're on top of it, not overlook it. So, big deal on that. So, appreciate the time. Any questions? Comment?
Guess you nailed it out of the park. Oh, there we go. Aaron.
Yeah, so your variable dividend is really kind of the thing that maybe we talk about right now. I think a lot of other operators will want to see how it plays out. And I think, it's probably a good idea just considering how oil prices are so volatile probably. What happens when you can't pay that out during the dividend? I mean, right now, let's say it's a 7% dividend, that's huge. $300 million, whatever it is for the quarter. That's amazing, but it's like, what happens when you're not paying a dividend and investors
That's honestly
get nothing because you had a very
a great question. And that was the reason that we wanted to keep the fixed dividend. And we may move that fixed dividend up a little bit because we're feeling pretty good about things. But the nice thing about the variable dividend, don't get me wrong, I mean, a lot of that variable dividend is commodity prices. It's been fantastic. We're about 50% hedged this year. The positive side of that is we were about 60% hedged in the first half, 40% hedged in the second half. But we do feel that as long as we feel that the industry and Wall Street will understand. Now, I know that that's not always believed, but they know commodity price, and a lot of that variable dividend is based on commodity price. So if commodity prices walk down, the variable dividend will need to walk down with it because we're not seeing as much cash flow. We haven't had to hit that hurdle yet, and we're not going to have to hit that. I mean, fourth quarter's looking very good. So I mean, our goal is really this to be the fourth very strong variable dividends. So that's what the industry is really watching out for, because a lot of people have talked to us about it, but haven't gone to it yet because of exactly that reason. You've seen some special dividends, but you haven't seen as much of the variable dividends.
I guess that's it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks again for our speakers. Joe, always amazing. Chad, excellent again since last year. And Rich, thank you again, sir. Once again, we need more advocates in our industry talking about it. Matt has, 20 different podcasts all about advocating for it. So everyone's got to be an advocate. Look forward to learning more about that, Chad, what you guys are building for everyone to have a little bit to talk about. Once again, we have the golf tournament on September 24th. Always look for more people to participate in it. It's a great time. Hefner? Is it Hefner, Rick? Yeah. Yeah, so that would be a great time. Hopefully, we can see some more of you guys out there, and be safe.
As always.